The final letter for our acronym ACTS is the S. And the S stands for service. I believe that this is the final connection that we need to understand if we're going to do hermeneutics. If we're going to interpret the exegesis, so interpret the things that we have come to understand about the biblical word, if we're going to interpret that for our context and for our environment. And that's the concept of service. And this goes back to what we were doing in Module 1, when we talked about what is a sermon, what are we trying to achieve in a sermon. That a sermon is not just logos. It's not just a written word made verbal. It's not just reading the Bible to people. It's more than that. When we're going to read the Bible to people, that's okay. That's wonderful. That's exciting. But in fact, the process of preaching is that of rhema, of proclamation, of telling people what they can connect the Word of God to. That's the important part of preaching. Not just talking about the Word, not just interpreting it in an exegetical or exegesis way, but then taking it to that next step and actually making it connect to them. And I believe that the greatest point of connection is this understanding of service. Another word for service is the word application. Is how do we get the word to serve the people? How do we get the word to actually serve their life? How do we get it to help them to grow in discipleship, to grow in enthusiasm, to grow in inspiration? Those are the things that in fact a sermon's meant to do. And so therefore, once we go through that process of interpretation, one of the things that have to be in the back of our minds constantly is saying, how do I take this good news and help the people who are going to hear it put it into action? How are they going to apply it to their lives? How are they going to live this word out in their lives? And I think that that's really the function of preaching. And you can see that I've put service as a final process because we need to go through the others first. We need to be aware of ourselves. We need to be aware of our audience and our world. We need to go through our culture and understand the bedrock from which we're going to be preaching. To understand that our tradition is different to the traditions of the Bible. Out of that, we need to come with a translation saying, how do I now tell my people the same word, but in words that they will understand, in images that they will understand, in pictures that they will understand. Remember, Jesus used parables, but he didn't use parables that were outside of the context of his people. No, the parables that he used were ones that would connect to the people. They would connect with their lives and with their understanding. In the same way, the process of translation, therefore, is doing the same thing. Is making new stories, new pictures that tell that same concept as Jesus, but in words and in understandings and in picture stories and in narrative that will connect with the audience that we're speaking to. But if we just stop there, then all that we have are good stories. Then all that we have is enjoyable sermons. Then all that we have is when someone will come past you as a preacher and say, that was a great sermon, you kept me awake all the time. And yes, that is an objective, but it's not the only objective of preaching. The objective of hermeneutics is not only to be able to translate to them, but also to encourage them to serve. Is to encourage them then to go out and to do that which the Word has taught them to do. To go out and develop their relationship with themselves and with God and with the people outside. That's what makes it good news. What makes it good news is not only that it's good news to the hearer, but it's good news in the way in which the hearer will take that good news and use it in order to go out and to live as Christ would have us live. I believe that that's really the final outcome of it. But it's part of the process of hermeneutics. It's part of what we need to ask every text, is to say, how does this enable my service? How does this enable me to take up the bowl and the towel and wash my neighbor's feet? I pray that when we can do that, that's when we can truly apply passages to real life. And when we do that, that will give us all the raw material that we need to then move into the next stage of actually producing the sermon.